Imagine an American car brand that once sold hundreds of thousands of vehicles, produced legendary cars like the Cougar and Grand Marquis, and stood proudly between Ford and Lincoln. For decades, Mercury represented power, style, comfort, and affordable luxury. But then, something went terribly wrong. Sales collapsed, its identity disappeared, and in 2011, the final Mercury rolled off the production line, ending a 70-year journey. What caused this once successful American brand to disappear? Was it foreign competition, changing customer preferences, rising fuel costs, or Ford's own strategy? In this video, we'll uncover the fascinating rise, peak, decline, and ultimate downfall of Mercury. The history of the American automobile industry is filled with famous brands that helped shape transportation, technology, and industrial development throughout the 20th century. While companies such as Ford, Chevrolet, Cadillac, and Chrysler became household names across the world, several other brands also played important roles in defining the American automotive landscape. One of these was Mercury, an automobile brand established by the Ford Motor Company in 1938. For more than 70 years, Mercury occupied a unique position in the American market, offering vehicles that were more stylish and luxurious than Ford models but more affordable than Lincoln automobiles. Throughout its existence, Mercury produced a wide range of sedans, coupes, convertibles, station wagons, and sport utility vehicles that appealed to millions of American drivers. At its height during the 1950s, 1,960 seconds and 1,970 seconds, Mercury represented quality, performance, comfort, and prestige. Yet, despite decades of success, the brand gradually lost its identity, experienced declining sales, and was ultimately discontinued in 2011. The story of Mercury is therefore one of innovation, achievement, competition, changing consumer preferences, and strategic business decisions. To understand Mercury's history, it is first necessary to understand the condition of the American automobile industry during the early 20th century. The automobile industry was one of the fastest-growing industries in the United States. By the early 1900s, manufacturers such as Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and Chrysler had transformed the automobile from a luxury item into a product that ordinary families could afford. Henry Ford revolutionized automobile manufacturing through the introduction of the moving assembly line in 1913, dramatically reducing production costs and making vehicles like the Ford Model T accessible to millions of Americans. The automobile soon became an essential part of American life, changing transportation, commerce, urban planning, and social mobility. As automobile ownership increased, manufacturers recognized that customers had different income levels and expectations. Some buyers wanted inexpensive, reliable transportation, while others desired vehicles with greater comfort, advanced technology, elegant styling, and powerful engines. To satisfy these diverse market segments, automobile companies began creating multiple brands. General Motors was particularly successful with this strategy. It offered Chevrolet for entry-level buyers, Pontiac for those seeking sportier cars, Oldsmobile for middle-income customers, Bic for near-luxury buyers, and Cadillac for the luxury market. This carefully structured lineup enabled General Motors to retain customers as their incomes increased and their preferences evolved. Ford Motor Company initially lacked such a comprehensive product range. During the 1920s and early 1930s, Ford primarily sold affordable Ford vehicles and luxury Lincoln automobiles. There was a significant price gap between the two brands. Customers who wanted something more refined than a Ford but could not afford a Lincoln often turned to competitors such as Bic, Oldsmobile, or Chrysler's DeSoto and Dodge divisions. Ford executives recognized that they were losing thousands of potential customers because they lacked a competitive mid-priced automobile. The individual who most clearly recognized this problem was Edsel Ford, the only son of Henry Ford. Unlike his father, who emphasized simplicity and a Ford, Edsel appreciated elegance, innovation, modern styling, and customer preferences. He believed Ford Motor Company needed a vehicle that combined Ford's engineering reliability with greater luxury, improved styling, and additional features. His vision eventually led to the creation of the Mercury brand. Edsel Ford was widely respected for his artistic sense and business judgment. Although his father remained the dominant figure within the company, Edsel often advocated for more modern vehicle designs and broader product offerings. He understood that the automobile market had become increasingly competitive and that customers expected more than simple transportation. They wanted automobiles that reflected their social status, personal taste, and lifestyle. Mercury was designed specifically to satisfy these changing expectations. The decision to establish Mercury came during a difficult economic period. The United States was slowly recovering from the Great Depression, one of the most severe economic crises in modern history. Millions of Americans had lost their jobs, businesses had failed, and consumer spending had declined dramatically. Despite these challenges, automobile manufacturers recognized that economic recovery would eventually create renewed demand for automobiles. Ford therefore viewed Mercury not merely as a short-term product, but as a long-term investment in the company's future competitiveness. On November 4, 1938, Ford officially introduced the Mercury division. The new brand was positioned between Ford and Lincoln, creating a three-tier product strategy that closely resembled General Motors' successful business model. Mercury automobiles offered larger engines, longer wheelbases, improved interiors, higher quality materials, and more stylish body designs than standard Ford vehicles. At the same time, they remained considerably less expensive than Lincoln automobiles, making them attractive to middle-class professionals, business owners, and families seeking a premium driving experience without paying luxury prices. The first Mercury automobile, introduced as the 1939 Mercury 8, immediately demonstrated the company's objectives. Powered by Ford's dependable flathead V8 engine, the Mercury 8 delivered better performance than many competitors while maintaining reasonable afford. The vehicle featured distinctive styling, a spacious passenger compartment, and numerous comfort improvements compared with standard Ford models. Customers responded enthusiastically. During its first year on the market, Mercury sold more than 65,000 vehicles, an impressive achievement for a completely new automobile brand. Introduced during a period of economic uncertainty, the early success of Mercury confirmed that Ford had correctly identified an important market opportunity. Customers appreciated having an automobile that balanced afford, luxury, and performance. Mercury quickly established a reputation for producing dependable vehicles with elegant styling and solid engineering. This reputation became one of the brand's greatest strengths during its early decades. However, Mercury's development was interrupted by global events. In 1939, the Second World War began in Europe, and following the United States' entry into the conflict in December 1941, American automobile manufacturers suspended civilian automobile production to support the war effort. Ford Motor Company, including the Mercury division, shifted its factories toward producing military equipment such as tanks, aircraft engines, trucks, and other essential wartime materials. Civilian automobile production remained largely halted until the end of World War II in 1945, although wartime production temporarily interrupted Mercury's growth. The brand emerged from the conflict with significant advantages. American factories had become more efficient, manufacturing technologies had advanced considerably, and consumer demand for new automobiles was extremely strong after years of wartime shortages. Returning military personnel, expanding families, and a rapidly growing economy created one of the largest automobile markets in history. Mercury was well positioned to benefit from these favorable conditions. The post-war years marked the beginning of one of the most prosperous periods in American automotive history. Rising household incomes, suburban expansion, and improved highway infrastructure encouraged automobile ownership on an unprecedented scale. Manufacturers introduced new technologies, improved safety features, automatic transmissions, more powerful engines, and increasingly sophisticated styling. Mercury participated actively in these developments, introducing new models that appealed to customers seeking comfort, performance, and prestige throughout the following decades. Mercury developed a distinctive identity within Ford Motor Company. It became known for vehicles that combined reliability with upscale features, serving customers who wanted something beyond an ordinary family car without entering the expensive luxury segment. Models such as the Monterey, Montclair, Park Lane, Cougar, Marquis, Grand Marquis, Capri, Sable, and Mountaineer each contributed to Mercury's reputation at different stages of its history. Some became commercial successes, while others gained recognition for innovation, performance, or distinctive styling. The establishment of Mercury in 1938 marked one of the most significant strategic decisions in the history of the Ford Motor Company. Although Ford had already established itself as one of America's leading automobile manufacturers through the success of the Model T and Model A, the company faced an important challenge during the 1930s. Its product lineup did not adequately serve customers who wanted an automobile that offered greater comfort, style, and prestige than a standard Ford, but remained significantly more affordable than a Lincoln. Competitors such as General Motors had successfully divided the automobile market into several price categories, allowing customers to move from one brand to another within the same company as their incomes increased. Ford, however, lacked a competitive offering in the growing mid-priced automobile segment. Recognizing this weakness, company executives, particularly Edsel Ford, developed a plan to introduce an entirely new automobile brand. This brand became Mercury, a name that would remain an important part of the American automotive industry for more than 7 decades. During the early 20th century, the American automobile market was changing rapidly. In the years following the First World War, economic growth increased the purchasing power of many American families. Consumers no longer viewed automobiles simply as a means of transportation. Instead, automobiles became symbols of personal achievement, social status, and individual style. Buyers expected more comfortable interiors, attractive exterior designs, smoother rides, improved performance, and additional convenience features. Manufacturers that could satisfy these changing expectations gained significant competitive advantages. General Motors understood this transformation particularly well. Under the leadership of Alfred P. Sloan, General Motors developed a marketing strategy that offered a car for every purse and purpose. Customers could begin with a Chevrolet and later upgrade to Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Bic, or Cadillac without leaving the General Motors family. This strategy proved remarkably successful because it encouraged customer loyalty throughout different stages of life and income growth. Ford Motor Company, despite its manufacturing excellence, found itself at a disadvantage. Its primary products consisted of affordable Ford automobiles and luxury Lincoln vehicles. The large price difference between these two brands created an opportunity that competitors eagerly exploited. Thousands of customers who desired a higher quality automobile than a Ford often purchased Bic, Oldsmobile, or Chrysler products because Ford simply had no comparable alternative. The individual who most strongly advocated filling this gap was Edsel Ford. As president of Ford Motor Company, Edsel possessed a much different philosophy than his father, Henry Ford. Henry believed automobiles should emphasize practicality, durability, afford, and mechanical simplicity. Edsel, while respecting these principles, believed automobiles should also incorporate elegance, beauty, comfort, and modern styling. He appreciated fine craftsmanship, artistic design, and technological innovation. Many historians credit Edsel Ford with transforming Ford Motor Company's design philosophy during the 1930s. Edsel recognized that the future success of Ford depended not only upon manufacturing efficiency, but also upon understanding evolving consumer preferences. He believed customers wanted automobiles that reflected their aspirations and lifestyles. Consequently, he proposed the creation of a completely new automobile division positioned between Ford and Lincoln. This proposal eventually received approval despite considerable internal debate within the company. Selecting an appropriate name for the new brand was an important decision. Ford executives chose Mercury, inspired by the Roman messenger god Mercury, who symbolized speed, mobility, communication, and progress. The name conveyed a sense of motion, elegance, and modernity that aligned perfectly with the image Ford hoped to establish. Unlike the practical image associated with Ford or the exclusive prestige associated with Lincoln, Mercury was intended to represent attainable luxury and refined performance. On November 4, 1938, Ford officially announced the establishment of the Mercury division. The first production model would be marketed as the 1939 Mercury 8. This automobile represented a careful balance between performance, afford, and luxury. Engineers sought to retain Ford's reputation for reliability while incorporating numerous improvements that justified Mercury's high price. The Mercury 8 featured Ford's well-known flathead V8 engine, enlarged to produce approximately 95 horsepower. Although this level of performance may appear modest by modern standards, it represented impressive engineering during the late 1930s. The V8 engine provided smooth acceleration, dependable operation, and sufficient power for highway driving, making the Mercury 8 attractive to customers seeking better performance than most entry-level automobiles. The Mercury's chassis was larger than that of contemporary Ford models, providing additional interior space and improved ride comfort. Designers increased the wheelbase, widened the body, and improved suspension characteristics to create a smoother driving experience. These modifications enabled Mercury to appeal to families, professionals, and business owners who desired greater comfort during long-distance travel. Styling represented another major strength of the Mercury 8. During the late 1930s, automobile design became increasingly streamlined, reflecting advances in aerodynamics and industrial design. Mercury incorporated graceful curves, integrated fenders, a prominent chrome grille, flowing body lines, and carefully proportioned dimensions that distinguished it from ordinary Ford vehicles. These design elements projected elegance without appearing excessively extravagant, helping Mercury establish a sophisticated identity from its very beginning. Interior quality also reflected Mercury's premium positioning. Upholstery materials, dashboard design, seating comfort, sound insulation, and interior trim exceeded the standards found in comparable Ford automobiles. Drivers appreciated the quieter cabins, improved visibility, larger passenger compartments, and higher quality finishes. Such features reinforced Mercury's image as a more refined automobile while remaining affordable for middle-income buyers. Ford's marketing department carefully positioned Mercury within the competitive marketplace. Advertisements emphasized that Mercury offered big car quality at a moderate price. Marketing campaigns highlighted performance, dependability, comfort, attractive styling, and exceptional value. Dealers presented Mercury as the logical choice for customers seeking advancement without entering the expensive luxury market occupied by Lincoln. The public responded positively almost immediately. During its first model year, Mercury sold more than 65,000 automobiles, exceeding many expectations for an entirely new automobile brand. These impressive sales demonstrated that Ford had successfully identified an underserved segment of the market. Customers appreciated the combination of Ford engineering, V8 performance, attractive styling, and upscale features at a reasonable price. The success of Mercury also strengthened Ford's competitive position against General Motors and Chrysler. Rather than losing customers to big or Oldsmobile as incomes increased, Ford could now encourage buyers to remain within its own family of brands. This strategic advantage contributed significantly to Ford's long-term marketing strategy, despite Mercury's encouraging beginning. The international political situation soon created major challenges for the entire automobile industry. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland, beginning the Second World War in Europe. Although the United States initially remained neutral, international tensions affected industrial planning and economic priorities. Automobile manufacturers began preparing for the possibility that civilian production might eventually give way to military requirements. When the United States entered World War II following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, American industry underwent one of the largest manufacturing transformations in history. Automobile production for civilian customers was largely suspended as factories converted to military production. Ford Motor Company, including the Mercury division, redirected its engineering expertise, manufacturing facilities, and workforce toward supporting the Allied war effort instead of producing passenger cars. Ford factories manufactured military trucks, tanks, aircraft engines, armored vehicles, and other essential equipment. One of Ford's most remarkable achievements during this period was the production of B-20 for Liberator bombers at the Willow Run plant in Michigan. Using assembly line principles originally developed for automobile manufacturing, Ford dramatically increased aircraft production, demonstrating the flexibility and efficiency of American industrial capabilities. Although Mercury itself produced few civilian automobiles during the war years, the division remained an important part of Ford's overall organization. Engineers who had previously designed passenger vehicles contributed to military engineering projects. Factory workers developed valuable manufacturing skills while producing wartime equipment under demanding conditions. These experiences later benefited Mercury when civilian automobile production resumed after the war. The wartime suspension of automobile manufacturing created enormous consumer demand. Millions of Americans postponed purchasing new vehicles because production had ceased. As a result, existing automobiles remained in service far longer than originally intended. Maintenance and repair became increasingly important as owners sought to preserve aging vehicles until new automobiles became available. Meanwhile, Technological advances continued despite the interruption of civilian automobile production. Wartime research accelerated developments in metallurgy, manufacturing processes, engine design, hydraulics, aviation technology, and production management. Many of these innovations would later find applications in post-war automobiles, including future Mercury models. The end of World War II in 1945 marked the beginning of a new era for both Mercury and the American automobile industry. Soldiers returned home, families expanded during the post-war baby boom, suburban communities developed rapidly, and economic prosperity increased consumer purchasing power. Americans who had delayed buying automobiles for several years eagerly awaited the return of civilian automobile production. Ford Motor Company recognized that Mercury was ideally positioned to benefit from these favorable economic conditions. The brand had already established a reputation for quality, reliability, comfort, and value before the war. Customers remembered Mercury as an attractive alternative to both inexpensive Ford models and expensive luxury automobiles. Consequently, Mercury entered the post-war market with considerable goodwill and strong growth potential. The establishment period between 1938 and 1945 therefore laid the essential foundation for Mercury's future success. During these formative years, the company defined its market position, developed its engineering philosophy, established its design identity, and earned consumer confidence. Although World War II temporarily interrupted production, it did not diminish Mercury's long-term prospects. Instead, the experience strengthened Ford's manufacturing capabilities and prepared the company for the unprecedented expansion that would characterize the post-war automobile industry. Looking back, the creation of Mercury demonstrated remarkable strategic foresight. Edsor Ford correctly recognized that American consumers desired an automobile positioned between economy and luxury. His vision provided Ford Motor Company with a competitive advantage that lasted for decades. Mercury became much more than simply another automobile brand. It represented aspiration, attainable success, refined engineering, and the growing sophistication of the American middle class. The decisions made during these early years established the identity that would guide Mercury throughout its golden era in the decades that followed. The year 1978 represented the high watermark of Mercury's commercial success. The brand sold approximately 580,000 vehicles, and its lineup included some of the most recognizable automobiles in its history. The Cougar had established Mercury as a major player in the personal luxury market. The Marquis provided large car comfort and prestige, and other Mercury models helped the company compete across several segments. From the outside, Mercury appeared to be a successful and established American automobile brand with a secure future. However, the automotive environment that had allowed Mercury to flourish was changing rapidly. During the following 2 decades, the company faced an extraordinary combination of economic pressures: fuel crises, stronger foreign competition, changing consumer preferences, government regulations, internal competition from Ford, and an increasingly unclear brand identity. These problems gradually weakened Mercury and eventually placed its survival in doubt. The first major challenge came from the transformation of the American automobile market. Following the energy crisis of the 1970s, the 1973 oil crisis had already changed consumer attitudes toward large, fuel-hungry automobiles. But the situation became even more serious during the second oil crisis at the end of the decade. In 1979, political instability in Iran contributed to another major disruption in global oil supplies. Gasoline prices increased, fuel availability became a concern, and American consumers once again began looking for smaller and more economical vehicles. This trend created a serious problem for Mercury because many of its most profitable products were large automobiles powered by relatively large engines. For decades, American automobile manufacturers had competed primarily by offering larger cars, more powerful engines, greater interior space, and increasingly luxurious features. Mercury had benefited enormously from this philosophy. A customer could purchase a large Mercury sedan with a V8 engine, comfortable seats, extensive chrome trim, and a spacious interior at a price below many luxury competitors. But the economic logic behind such vehicles weakened as gasoline became more expensive. Japanese automobile manufacturers were particularly well positioned to take advantage of this change. Companies such as Toyota, Honda, and Nissan had already established a presence in the American market with smaller automobiles. Their vehicles were often praised for fuel efficiency, reliability, relatively low maintenance costs, and practical engineering. As gasoline prices rose, more American consumers began considering these qualities when purchasing vehicles. Mercury's challenge was not simply that its automobiles consumed more fuel. The deeper problem was that its traditional brand image had been built around characteristics that were becoming less important to some consumers. Mercury represented size, comfort, power, and prestige. The new generation of buyers increasingly wanted efficiency, reliability, compact dimensions, and afford. This did not mean large American cars immediately disappeared, but the market was clearly moving in a different direction. Ford Motor Company understood that it needed smaller and more efficient automobiles. The company introduced and expanded models designed to compete in the compact and mid-size segments. Mercury received versions of several of these products. However, this created a new strategic challenge. The more Mercury depended on Ford-based vehicles, the more difficult it became to distinguish the two brands. This problem, often described as badge engineering or rebadging, became one of Mercury's greatest weaknesses. Instead of developing completely unique vehicles for Mercury, Ford increasingly shared platforms, engines, transmissions, body structures, and other components among its brands. From an engineering and financial perspective, this was understandable. Automobile development was extremely expensive, and sharing components could save millions of dollars. But consumers did not necessarily care about Ford's manufacturing efficiencies. They cared about what made a Mercury worth purchasing instead of a Ford. During Mercury's strongest years, the distinction had been relatively clear. A Mercury Cougar, for example, had its own distinctive styling and personality. The Marquis occupied an upscale position that was easily understood by customers. Earlier Mercury automobiles had often looked substantially different from Ford products. During the 1980s and 1990s, however, the distinction became less obvious. One of Mercury's most important models during the 1980s was the Mercury Grand Marquis, which became a long-running success. The Grand Marquis was large, comfortable, traditional, and relatively conservative. It appealed to buyers who continued to value the characteristics associated with traditional American automobiles. Government fleets, rental companies, older buyers, and customers who preferred large rear-wheel drive sedans became important parts of its customer base. The Grand Marquis helped keep Mercury alive during difficult years. But its success also revealed a growing problem. Mercury was becoming increasingly dependent on older customers who preferred traditional automobiles. Younger consumers were often more attracted to Ford's sportier products, imported cars, or emerging luxury brands. At the same time, the American automobile market was undergoing a significant demographic change. Baby boomers were reaching different stages of adulthood, and their automobile preferences were becoming more diverse. Some wanted sporty cars, while others preferred practical family vehicles, minivans, or increasingly popular sport utility vehicles. Mercury needed products that could appeal to these changing lifestyles.